Hi, welcome back to Turquoise Sky Custom Spirits. This is part of a series where I talk about the the process of opening a distillery, or really a lot of businesses this applies to, and sort of the things we have to go through, the things we have to do. So today I'm going to talk about finding a location. And this is just, it's exhausting. I mean, it's like house hunting, except it's like house hunting. It just sucks. There's parts that are fun, there's parts that aren't fun, but at least with a house, you're getting like all done, ready to go. The house is there, move in ready. And with businesses, it isn't like that. And we'll talk about it a little bit more. So, number one, before you even start to think about your space or where to look, you need to know your zoning. So I talked about that in another video. For me personally, we had to go through and figure out what our zoning was going to be, and we ended up looking for C2, or basically lower on the scale. And then from there, now we can narrow it down. We go, okay, now I'm not looking at any C1s, I'm not looking at any planned shopping center or any of the neighborhood retail, basically. So that narrows it down quite a bit. So now I know where my zoning is, and the next thing I need to do is I need to look at potential spaces. So I'm going to take you over to our screenshot for that one. We're going to look through some of the resources that I've used. Basically, you're looking at, your three main resources are going to be two websites. LoopNet and Crexi are what I used. Would you get in here? LoopNet and Crexi are what I used. I'm sure there's other ones out there. Those are just like the two biggest ones. And then a realtor or a representative. Now, you should use all three. A lot of people just, they get their realtor and they go, okay, it's your job now, like find me stuff. I think that's unwise, if only because the more that you look at places and the more you send these to your realtor, the more they're going to know what they're looking for you. Because whatever your initial description is almost certainly never as much as you're hoping for, or as much as your realtor would want to know. So I recommend still looking for everything, and then use your realtor basically as a mediator, as someone who's going to try to get you the best deals and get you the best prices on everything. So we'll move on down here, and then I've got Crexi up right now just because it's the one I was already logged into, and we'll just check out a property and I'll show you how to read it. So a lot of these are undisclosed. That doesn't really do us any good. So let's look at this guy right here. So we'll go through how to read this, and then we'll talk about all the other elements of finding a space. Right, so on here we've got, it's got a picture, a couple pictures. Personally, I have never once been satisfied by the pictures that a realtor puts up. I think homes, they have it a little bit easier, or they do a little bit more work on them. Commercial real estate, they really just, whatever, here you go. Like half the time Google Street View is a better option for looking. But more importantly, right, we're going to scroll down here. Nobody cares who you talk to. Your yearly rate, 14 a square foot a year. Right, so you're going to go over here into your building, and I know, okay, there's the building information. We'll look at that in a second. And here's the square footage information. Now, I personally was looking for something between 1,200 and 1,500 square feet. So they've got two options in here that I'm like, okay, right away, these are potentials. This one was nice enough to have a floor plan, maybe. A lot of times they don't have floor plans. Okay, Yep, so this one, they actually have some extra information for you, so this was a good one to pull up, right? There's one of the suites that's available, and they didn't give you a floor plan. Oh well. But at least you know which suite you're actually looking at and who your neighbors are. For me, at least, that's kind of a big deal, because if I know I've got, if this was a daycare right here, then all right, they probably don't want a distillery right next door. Let's just move on from here. But, all right, so we're looking good. They've given you that information. We know we're at 1,400 square feet. That's within what I'm looking for. Sometimes you're going to run into, okay, here, this is 106 and 107. It's 2,450 square feet. Sometimes they're willing to subdivide that. So if you really like everything you see about the rest of it, and it's just that the space is too big, or that there's two spaces next to each other that are separated and you think they would knock the wall out for you, it's worth it to ask sometimes. So we know this is the right size. Let's look at the building. 660 days on the market. That tells you there might be a little bit of wiggle room in your prices. This is retail. It doesn't tell me if it's a C2, C3, whatever. Judging from the area and the other tenants, this is most likely a C2. But that's something that you ask before you start getting into anything. And then they have their little sales pitches going on, like you can't figure it out for yourself. Like, oh my God, it's right next to the 303. No wonder, that's where I was looking. So for this one, you're looking at $14 a square foot a year, and it says triple net. So when they say that, first of all, you can either look per square foot per year or per square foot per month. Personally, I like looking at it per year, because then I can just multiply by the square footage, divide by 12, and I have my monthly rent. Or if you go per month, you just multiply by the square footage. But for me, at least, when I see, right, it says 117 a square foot a month. Well, the difference between that and 125 a square foot a month, you go, oh, well, I mean, it's a couple of cents. What's the difference? Except it's multiplied times 1,500 every time you do that. So I don't like that, just because I feel like it makes me think I can start moving up when it's not an accurate representation of my financial situation or how much I want to spend per month. So I like it per year. Some people like it per month. I've noticed that retail tends to be a little bit more 14 a square foot a year, and like your industrial tends to be more per month, but it doesn't really matter either way. They tend to come out fairly comparable. Now, as for this guy, and I'll just evaluate this like as if I were interested in this property still, right? So I know that this is, I guess we're going to get into a little bit more. I know that this is around the Loop 303 in Arizona. And if you don't know where that is, it's way on the west side of Phoenix. Here. This is the 303. This is sort of where that building is at. So I live sort of over here. My actual area, and I'll get into this a little bit better, is in here, is where I really wanted to look. So my first evaluation of this location is, okay, it is well outside of where I really wanted to be. So I go, okay, is the price okay for how far outside where I want to be? How much am I giving up? 14 a square foot a year is a great price for this area, at least. 14 a square foot isn't bad, except for, remember, we're looking at triple nets. So there's basically three big ways that they do these things, right? So triple net is the most popular, especially with retail. It's literally net, net, net. And it's basically your property taxes, it's mostly taxes, and then your CAMs, your common area maintenance fees. And that's where you really start to get a lot of variety. So for this location, it's $14 a square foot plus your triple nets, plus your common area maintenance fees. Now this is a pretty nice facade, but it doesn't have a lot of greenery. So I wouldn't expect the triple nets for this to be more than $4. Like rough estimate, throw it out there. I wouldn't expect the triple nets for this to be more than $4. But some areas, if they had, a gigantic green area in front, if they have a big plaza with a beautiful fountain and all this extra stuff, then you're going to look at $6 or $7 in triple nets per square foot. So then you're looking at, okay, well now my $14 a square foot just jumped to almost $20 a square foot or even more. So that's where you have to be careful with triple nets. And the triple nets are subject to change. So if you get in at a good price and then they put in a gigantic, gorgeous fountain, they can say, hey, well, triple nets got more expensive. Sorry. The other option, the other side of that scale is gross. So it's 20 a square foot, that's it. We cover everything. That's your water, that's your electricity. I don't want to ever have to send you a single bill because it's done. It's included. You see that a lot more with the industrial spaces. And personally, I really like that just because it's easier, it feels cleaner, and you know exactly what you're getting into. And then there's modified gross, which is right down the middle. We're going to cover your taxes. We're going to cover a certain amount of your common area maintenance fees. And then you might get charged more. It's variable if you're a high water user, a high electricity user. Like if you're running, a water service, if you're doing where you fill up the bottles, obviously you're going to go through significantly more water than any of the tenants around you. They're going to bill you separately for water. Or if you're running a server room, like you're running 100 servers out of this building, well, I mean, that's a ton of electricity. It's way more than they expect you to need. You're going to be billed for electricity separately in situations like that. And then we get into what the space looks like on the inside. And they have a couple different ways to describe these. There's gray shell, there's vanilla shell, there's partial build out, and there's turnkey. And I'm just going to forewarn you right now, what they say on the listing, I have found is really not super reflective of the build out state. Okay. So gray shell is when, they've built this big new building and they want to get tenants in, but they don't know who's going to move in. They don't know how much space they want. They don't know where they want their fixtures. They're not going to guess. They're not going to assume. They're not going to build out an office and then pray that they find the right tenant for that specific space. So they are going to build this giant, gorgeous building on the outside and leave the inside entirely empty. They're not going to deal with it at all. So then that way, if you get a gym that comes in and wants 4 spaces, 4 doors basically, then, okay, interrupted there for a second. So that way, if a gym wants to come in and they want basically 4 spaces worth, then the builder only has to pay for a single wall. And when you have a gray shell, It's obviously it's unfinished, it's not in a deliverable condition. So then you're looking at something called tenant improvement or tenant improvement allowance, something like that, where the builder has set aside money. They know that the building's not ready for a tenant to come in. So they have a certain amount of money set aside, and they go, okay, well, you're getting this square footage, and you need this much to get it ready, then we'll pay this much towards the space so that it's in a usable condition. And if it's a gray shell, that's going to be significantly more because they haven't put any money into it yet. Now, the next one up, right, so we've got our gray shell, which is completely unfinished, untouched. The next one up is going to be your vanilla shell. And that is when they have built out the walls. There's a certain amount of electricity in over here and water over here and whatever. But it's very malleable. It's still, okay, if we need to knock a door out here, or if we need to put a wall up here, or, run electricity to this part, it's still super easy because they've done minimal amounts of work in there. And your tenant improvements for that space are going to be a lot less because theoretically you only need to make minor improvements, right? We need a wall dividing the middle space. I need water on this wall. So that's your vanilla shell. The next one up is a partial build out, which to me means that it's sort of ready to go, but there's still a lot of wiggle room. So a partial build out would be like, if it was a former tattoo parlor and it's got electricity at the stations, but the walls have all been torn down, and you can really make it into anything. So a former tattoo parlor, you go, okay, well, that would also work really well for, a salon or a call center because they've got electricity everywhere, whatever. But it's pretty malleable. It doesn't have to be the same thing it was. And then you have your turnkey situations. And that's where sometimes a tenant leaves and either they've gone bankrupt or they just closed down business, but they didn't want all the stuff inside of it, right? So you say you had a hair salon and they went out of business, and the landlord gets to keep everything that's inside there as part of like the back payment situation. So in a situation like that, it's literally ready to go. Like the seats are there, the bowls are there, the sinks are there, like it's ready to go. You just have to put a new name on it, put a new shine on it, and open the door. And that's a turnkey. And I think those ones are where you're really going to want a realtor. Those ones I haven't seen as much listed on the online websites for those. So in this case, it doesn't tell me the type on Suite 100, but it does tell me Suite 111 is a vanilla shell. So that means everything else around it is built out. There's water going through the walls. There's electricity in certain places, but it's pretty malleable still. So that's how you know what you're doing. Also, don't trust blindly. Like I said, sometimes these just aren't very reflective, either because of creative and good photography. There's some where I look at the pictures and I'm like, oh, that looks nice. It's very clean. It's very good looking. And then I get there and they don't tell you there's like a crack shanty across the street and it's in a horrible part of town and everything looks decrepit except for the one shot that they took a picture of. So I try to go to every single location before I even send it to my realtor, just to like drive by. Do I feel safe in the neighborhood? Do I feel good in the place? Does it look as good as it says? Is the place actually there? A lot of these I've found are not accurate. They're not updated. So, this one, right, we just looked at it, Suite 100 and Suite 110 were available. But then when we looked at their updated information, it didn't have any Suite 100 on it. It only had 111. So if I really wanted that 1466, if I really wanted that space, I wouldn't know until I get there with my realtor that it doesn't exist, that someone else is in there. Like, no, you don't want to do that to yourself. You don't want to do that to your realtor. And then there's little things that you notice when you're driving through, like, okay, yes, it's got close freeway proximity, but you have to go through 2 back roads to get to it. And that's why it's such a great deal, is because it's, 1 minute walking from the freeway and a 15-minute drive for some reason, because the roads just don't go the right ways. Or, I went to one the other day. It said it was a partial build out. I was expecting, okay, something I can work with. I don't feel too bad like breaking down a wall or two. And it was literally full build out, still had the office furniture in it from the last guy, like move in ready, just put a new name on the door. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to come in here and demolish all of the walls, because that's what I need for my space, is to break everything down and then build up a single wall in the middle. So I definitely recommend, if you're shopping in the space where you live, which I also strongly don't believe in, at least as a small business. Once you're a big guy and you've got space for days and you can pay fancy realtors and stuff and really good people to do it, then pay them. But if you're a small business owner, if you're starting one spot and it's like your spot, don't just trust someone else. You go out there and you look at it, because if you just trust someone else, you're not going to end up being happy with it. You're not going to know what you're getting into. All right, so that's how you read these. This is crexi, and then the other one is loopnet. They're both fine. I don't have a preference either way. I do recommend checking both of them because the listings are different. People pay to be on this one or that one. And then your realtor has one that he pays like $7,000, or they pay like $7,000 a month to use this official commercial real estate thing. So they'll have the better one, but they don't know what you need, and they're not going to drive around and narrow down a list of 20 into a list of 5. All right, so the next thing you should consider in general is there's a couple different things. So first of all, your map points, right? So I live up here, and I don't want to drive to Mesa, right? That's an 2-hour drive every time I want to go in traffic. It's a 2-hour drive. So Mesa might have great prices, but I'm not buying over there. I have to work at this place. Downtown Phoenix, a little bit better, but it's expensive, and I really don't want to have to drive from up here all the way over here. So when I went to my realtor, and just in general when I'm looking, for me personally, I said it's gotta be in, I wish I just had a pen. It's gonna be basically in this square, which really narrows it down when you're searching, because you can search by map and you can just zoom in until it only shows you these spaces. Now, I live in, obviously, a very, very large city. Phoenix is in the top 5 cities in the United States. So I have a lot of options. If you are in a smaller town, you probably don't have as many options. If you're in a more restrictive place, you don't have as many options. If you're building a gigantic distillery, if you're needing 10,000 square feet, it's going to be full production, grain to glass, thousands of bottles a minute. Obviously, you are going to be a little more limited. You're going to be down in the industrial areas. But basically I went, okay, I'm willing to drive within this square. I want to be near the airport, which is somewhere over here, right? So the airport's over here. So I go, okay, anything that I have in this square is going to be within 30 minutes of the airport, basically. And those were my considerations, is where am I? How far am I willing to drive? Where are my customers? So I really wanted to stay on this I-17 corridor, right? Because anyone who lives on the west side, they're used to driving all the way over here. They have to do it every day. If you live over here in Surprise, you almost certainly work over here. And then anyone on the east side, and this is like just an Arizona thing, obviously you know your region better than I do. Anyone on the east side in Arizona isn't willing to go past the I-17. A lot of them are like kind of bougie about going past the 51. So if you're in Arizona, right, Scottsdale, there's a lot of money, there's a lot of people looking to show it off, which is great for what I do. I need them to be willing to go over here. And I did not feel like Scottsdale people would be willing to go over here, because that is a really long drive, particularly when the 101 stops here and you have to find your way all the way over there. Okay, so your map points, is it centralized? Obviously you have to get a feel for who you're working with. I have kind of the luxury of being an appointment business, so I can expect people to be willing to drive for what I do. If you are relying a lot on your tasting room, that's going to change what you do quite a bit. So, if I were doing a cocktail distillery a vodka distillery that focused on really high-end, like show-it-off kinds of vodka, and I was going to have a big tasting room that did a lot of cocktails, it was basically like a vodka club, I would have that in Scottsdale, right? If I were doing a really sort of unique grain to glass, like whatever we can get our hands on, whatever the farmer has left over, that's what I'm gonna take. We're gonna just play with everything. I would probably put that in Central Phoenix. That's where the weirdos, in the best way, that's where the weirdos are. That's where your clients are who are going to love that in Arizona. Personally, I'm a West Side kind of girl. Very relaxed, very laid back, I want nice things, I want them at a good price, and I don't want to have to put on, $200 heels to go to the grocery store kind of thing, which is the way you feel when you're in Scottsdale. So for those of you who don't live here, you have to look nice to go shopping in Scottsdale, and I don't want to do that. So, no, come on the other side. All right, so centralized, get a feel for your location, your vibe. Every city's got a vibe to it, so just know yours. And then your regulations. Personally, I know the regulations for City of Peoria and City of Phoenix, like the actual legal limits, right? So this is Phoenix down here, this is Peoria over here. I don't know much about Glendale's regulations. I don't know anything about Scottsdale's regulations. Surprise is small enough and young enough that they don't know much about their regulations either. So you want to sort of consider that. I know I've heard Glendale is extremely difficult to work with as a small business owner. That's something that I keep in mind when I'm searching for locations. I go, oh, that's nice. It's in downtown Glendale. What hoops are they going to make me jump through? What extra taxes am I going to have to pay? Just things to keep in mind. Obviously, again, you know your own cities better than I do. Does it have what you need, or can you do it? So for me, right, one of my stipulations is it has to have double doors so that I can get pallets in and into my workspace. You may need bay doors. You may need garage doors. You may. It's up to you what your business needs. It's up to you what you're looking for, but you have to take into account whether or not they're going to be willing to work with you. So when I look at a space and they have, this one right here, right? I looked at this space and they were willing to give us double doors. It was that guy in the corner there. They were willing to work with double doors, but they didn't want to build a wall in between to divide the space to make it smaller. And I'm not willing to have 2,300 square feet, so that one fell through. There are some of them who, due to the architecture of the space, they just flat out, they're like, I cannot replace these doors. I cannot put in a double door, or I'm not going to put in a double door, because we can get another client who doesn't care. Sometimes that's going to be your answer, and you just sort of weigh what's important, what's not important. For me, one of the really big ones was also, in addition to the double doors, was it had to have updated fire sprinkler system. So one of the very first ones that we really loved the architecture on the outside. It was right along the light rail. The price was on point, but the building was built in like 1920, and it didn't have an updated fire system, and they were grandfathered in as, an office building or whatever. They didn't have to have a sprinkler system. And in a building like that, for those of you who don't know, it's not just a matter of attaching it to the water line. There's a whole situation of the pressure, the water capacity, where does the drainage go, these things that just weren't considered. So it's not a matter of going, oh, well, I'll just throw in a system for you. I mean, that's asking for like $20,000 worth of work. So obviously that guy was like, oh, hell no, I'm not spending $20,000 to put in a sprinkler system so that you can have your little thing here. So you have to take into account whether they're willing to work with you, and whether they're willing to negotiate with you. So that's where you really want to have your representation. That's when I got my representation. Was we were looking at another location, not even this one, and I felt like we were ready to go. We were ready to pull the trigger, and they were asking me for my terms, and I just don't have the expertise to know what's fair to ask. And especially in, we're going through a pandemic right now, the market's all over the place, we don't know what's happening, and, do I go, oh, well, I just don't want to ask for too much and have them outright deny it. I don't want to ask for too little because we're in the middle of a pandemic. Maybe they're just desperately trying to get people in. So that's when you really want to have your representation, because they are out there negotiating all day. They've been doing it for years, and they are going to work to get you what you need, and they're going to get you it at the best price. And they know all the negotiating tools and whatever. And, sometimes you walk into a place and you're just like, oh my God, I love it. Everything's perfect. It's perfect. It's my dream. I just want to come and live here. And, you're saying it right in front of the realtor whose job it is to get you to pay the most money for it. So it's nice to have that in-between guy where he goes, okay, no, this is, this is what we're going to ask for. This is what we expect. Let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can do to meet in the middle. And then the last point, and this is especially true for small business owners, right? How do you feel in it, right? Because they say the first year of business, you live at your business more than you live at home. And I've seen that to be true in other small business owners, and especially in an industry like this, breweries, wineries, meaderies, and distilleries. We love what we do. We love doing it. We love being there. and you're basically going to live there because you're doing what you love. And for a lot of us, for the first time in our lives, we're working for ourselves and doing what we love and being in a place that's truly ours. At least that's the way I feel about it. And you have to be somewhere that you feel comfortable. I know that we've ruled out several locations that we drove by, and my family and my boyfriend were like, no, you're going to be closing at 10 o'clock at night. You're going to be cleaning up until late. Knowing me, I'm going to be there working late just because I want to. And they don't feel safe. They don't feel comfortable having me working there late. So it was a hard no, done. Like, don't even call anybody. It's not happening. In spite of all the other great things that those locations had going for them. So there's the comfort in that sense, and then there's the comfort in the sense of, do you look forward to being here every day? Does pulling up to your building like make you happy? And for me, that's a really big thing. I thrive on my spaces. I work better when I'm in a space that I enjoy and that I feel comfortable in and I feel like I have control over. And there's a lot of these places that are fine. They looked good. There was nothing really wrong with them, but it just didn't feel like the kind of place I want to come to every day. And when you're going to be coming to it every day, you have to keep that in mind. And you know, it's not just the girl in me saying this. Like, guys, you too. Like, you thrive on your spaces. If you work in a dark, sad, lonely room, your work will not be as good as it is when you're in a place that makes you happy and that's decorated the way you want and that makes you feel good, and there's, you know, a great taco place next door, and, you know, there's the bar down the street that you like to go to. Like, these are things that are worth thinking about. If it's a happy place for you and it's a convenient place for you, then you're gonna like it better. All right. That's it. That's all. It was only a 45-minute video, so I think this counts as a short one. So come back next time when I talk about things to think about when you are designing your space. And I'm not giving you tips on color matching and stuff like that, like real practical things you have to think about, like how not all your bartenders are 6 feet tall.